It seems like everyone's living in a world of video calls these days, doesn't it? But are we really getting the most out of them? I mean, is anyone really asking that question, I guess?
It is kind of funny how they've become so essential, though, right?
Totally.
Like, I can't imagine working or even just keeping in touch with people without them.
No, absolutely.
But I do think there's a real art to choosing the right platform for the right purpose.
That's what we're going to dive into today.
Yep.
You guys sent in some really interesting research on Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and Google Meet. And I think we're going to uncover which one of these is the perfect fit for you.
You know what's really fascinating to me? It's how each platform really caters to like a different style of communication. It's like they each have their own superpower.
Oh, I like that.
Hmm.
Superpowers. Okay. So let's start with Zoom. I feel like Zoom has literally become a verb at this point, you know? Like you Google something, you Zoom someone.
Oh, for sure. It's become like this universal language for online meetings.
Totally.
And it's not hard to see why. It's super user-friendly.
It is.
And even for massive meetings, the audio and video quality are usually pretty solid.
Yeah, and the features they offer for webinars are seriously impressive. Like we've got sources here about marketing agencies using Zoom in some really, really creative ways.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like one agency used Zoom breakout rooms during a global webinar so they could tailor their sales pitch to different segments of the audience. You know what's crazy? It led to a 25% increase in qualified leads.
Wow. Okay, so wait, they basically segmented their audience and had these smaller, more targeted conversations within the webinar?
Exactly. But Zoom has also had its fair share of hiccups, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah.
Remember Zoom bombing?
Oh, gosh. I feel like everyone has at least one awkward Zoom bombing story from like the early pandemic days.
Right, it was a whole thing. Though to be fair to Zoom, they've made some major security improvements since then.
They have. They've really stepped up their game.
Yeah, but it's still something to keep in mind, especially if you're dealing with sensitive information.
For sure.
And, you know, for smaller teams or quick meeting, Zoom can feel a little clunky,
Yeah.
like it's almost too much.
Yeah, especially when you factor in the cost of all those advanced features.
Right.
So if Zoom is kind of like the king of reaching a broad audience, what about Microsoft Teams? We've got research here about how it integrates with all the other Microsoft tools, and it sounds pretty powerful.
Oh, it's super powerful, especially if you're already using like Outlook and SharePoint and all that.
Yeah.
Teams becomes a central hub for communication.
Okay, so how would that work?
Well, think about it. You could be in an email thread in Outlook and schedule a meeting right from there.
Oh, wow.
Or you could be in a Teams meeting and co-author a proposal in real time with your colleagues.
Yeah, that level of integration would streamline things for sure.
It would. And there are some pretty amazing case studies to back that up. Like one manufacturing company was managing projects across multiple locations using Teams, and their timelines sped up by 30%.
That's incredible. 30% faster. That's huge. But wouldn't that level of integration kind of lock you into the whole Microsoft ecosystem? Like, what if you're using other tools besides Microsoft?
Yeah, that's a good point. Teams definitely works best if you're already fully immersed in the Microsoft world. Which brings us to Google Meet.
Okay, Google Meet.
This might be a good option if you're not a diehard Microsoft user.
Yeah, you know what? Google Meet has always felt like the simple, no-fuss option for video calls to me. Am I wrong?
I think that's a fair assessment. It's extremely user-friendly.
Yeah.
Integrates really seamlessly with Google Workspace.
So if you're someone who lives in Gmail Calendar and drive all day,
Exactly.
Meet just makes sense.
It does. Plus, it's very affordable, especially if you're already paying for Google Workspace. One of our sources mentioned a tech startup that actually saved 40% on their operational costs just by switching to Google Meet.
Wow. 40% cost savings. That's a powerful argument, especially for like smaller teams, you know, or anyone who's budget conscious. But does Meet actually have the features to compete with Zoom and Teams? Like I'm thinking about webinars, you know, those big events or really deep collaboration tools.
It's true that Meet doesn't have all the bells and whistles of Zoom for like massive webinars.
Right.
And it's not going to be your central hub for project management in the same way that Teams can be.
Okay. So if I'm not doing webinars or some sort of super complex project management, why would I pick Google Meet? What's its strength?
Think about those quick essential meetings, like
Yeah.
those daily check-ins or brainstorming sessions. We read about a nonprofit that was using Google Meet for daily check-ins with volunteers all over the world.
Okay, yeah, I remember that.
And it was perfect for them. It's simple, it's reliable, it gets the job done.
So we've got Zoom for those big audiences, Teams for the hardcore Microsoft users, and Meet for the quick and easy calls. But is there like one platform that's the best overall?
That's the thing. There really isn't a single best. The key is figuring out what your specific needs are
Right.
and finding the platform that aligns with those needs.
Okay, so it's about matching the tool to the job.
It's
It really is all about picking the right tool for the right job, right?
Exactly.
And it's interesting because we've got these really fascinating case studies that illustrate how different organizations are using these platforms to their advantage.
Yeah, for sure. Like we talked about the marketing agency that used the Zoom breakout rooms to boost their leads and that manufacturing company that was streamlining projects with teams.
Yeah.
But there's another example that really highlights Zoom's power for large events.
Oh, yeah. The university that used Zoom for their virtual open day. That
Yes.
was really cool.
They actually simulated campus tours
Yes.
using breakout rooms, so they could give prospective students a more like personalized and engaging experience.
And they saw a 20% increase in enrollment inquiries after that.
It's amazing.
It really goes to show that Zoom is still kind of the king when it comes to reaching large audiences in an impactful way.
Oh, for sure. But for internal collaboration, Teams really, really shines. Remember that case study with the healthcare provider?
Yeah, they were able to streamline communication between their administrative and clinical teams using Teams.
Right. And it wasn't just about like chat and video calls. They were integrating patient schedules and sharing files and even managing tasks all within the Teams platform.
Wow, so Teams essentially became their central nervous system for communication and collaboration.
Exactly.
So fascinating. But I'm curious about Google Meet. We talked about its simplicity, and affordability.
Hmm.
But where does it really excel? Where
Right.
does it really shine?
Think about those like quick essential meetings, like that nonprofit we read about that was using Google Meet for daily check-ins with volunteers all over the world.
Right.
For them, it was all about like staying on the same page,
Hmm.
having those quick touch points. And Meet was perfect for that.
It was reliable. It was easy to use. It didn't break the bank.
Exactly. And they were even launching the Google Meets directly from a shared Google Doc.
Oh, wow, that's smart.
So simple. No fuss, just efficient communication.
So we've got a pretty clear picture now of the strengths of each platform, but the world of video conferencing isn't standing still, is it? I mean, what are some of the exciting trends that we can expect to see in the future?
Oh, this is where things get really interesting. We're on the verge of some huge advancements in video conferencing, and it's largely being driven by artificial intelligence.
AI-powered video calls. Tell me more.
Okay, so imagine a world where language barriers are a thing of the past because we have real-time translation during meetings.
Wow, that would be amazing.
Right.
I've always felt like the potential for global collaboration is huge,
It is.
but the language barrier is like a major obstacle.
It is a major obstacle, but AI could solve that.
Wow.
And think about this AI-powered transcription so you never miss a single detail from a meeting,
Okay.
or even sentiment analysis so you can gauge the overall mood and engagement of the participants.
Wait, hold on. Sentiment analysis? So it's like AI can actually understand the emotions behind what people are saying?
It's getting really sophisticated. You know how algorithms are already analyzing our online behavior to target ads?
Yeah.
It's basically applying that same concept to video conferencing to provide valuable insights.
That's kind of mind-blowing, but also a little unsettling, to be honest. Like, it makes me wonder about the ethical implications of all this.
Right. There are definitely some important ethical considerations to keep in mind as this technology evolves, but let's not forget about the positive potential too.
Oh, for sure. Like,
Yeah.
imagine being able to connect with anyone in the world, regardless of what language they speak.
Exactly. Or think about how AI could make meetings more accessible for people with disabilities through things like real-time captioning.
So it's really about using this technology responsibly and thoughtfully to create a more inclusive and connected world.
I think so.
But all of this amazing tech won't matter much if the platforms aren't secure, right? I mean, we've all learned that lesson the hard way.
You are absolutely right. Security is paramount, especially as video conferencing becomes more and more integrated into like sensitive industries.
Right, like healthcare or finance.
Exactly. And we are seeing some positive trends there.
Oh, good.
Like platforms are implementing much more robust security measures. Things like end-to-end encryption,
Okay.
multi-factor authentication, and advanced threat detection.
That's good to hear, but I imagine staying ahead of the security threats is like a constant battle, right?
It is, and it's a shared responsibility.
Yeah.
Platforms need to keep evolving their security protocols, but users also need to be vigilant about things like using strong passwords and recognizing phishing scams.
So it's a partnership. We all have a role to play in keeping our virtual interactions safe.
Absolutely. And that partnership is only going to become more important as video conferencing continues to evolve. But before we get too deep into the future of all of this, let's take a step back and think about what we've learned about the platforms themselves. What are your biggest takeaways so far?
You know what I'm really struck by? How each platform seems to cater to a different need. It's like they each have their own strengths,
Yeah.
and it's up to us to figure out which one best fits our circumstances.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It's all about finding the right fit.
Yeah, it really is all about finding that perfect fit. But you know what this whole conversation has got me thinking about? The bigger picture, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, how is video conferencing really going to evolve in the coming years? Are we going to be having, like, holographic meetings in our living rooms?
Holograms might still be a little ways off,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think we can expect the lines between physical and virtual spaces to get even blurrier.
Oh, yeah.
Virtual reality and augmented reality are really starting to gain traction, and it's pretty easy to imagine those being incorporated into video conferencing platforms.
So instead of just seeing faces on a screen, you know, like a flat screen, we might feel like we're actually in the same room with someone,
Right.
even if we're miles apart.
Exactly. Like, imagine collaborating on a 3D model with colleagues all over the world or attending a virtual conference, but it feels like you're physically there,
Yeah.
experiencing the venue and networking with people.
That would be incredible. But, you know, it also kind of makes me wonder about the human element, you know? Like, are we going to lose something in the process of making things so virtual?
Oh, yeah.
Will we miss out on those subtle cues that you can only pick up on in person? Like body language and stuff?
That's a really good point, and it's a valid concern. I think the key is to strike a balance.
Yeah.
Technology should enhance our connections, not replace them.
Right.
We shouldn't lose sight of the value of those face-to-face interactions.
So it's not about choosing one over the other. It's about finding a way for them to coexist and complement each other.
Absolutely. We need to be mindful and intentional about how we use technology to connect with others. And it's not just about being present. It's about being present in a way that's meaningful.
I love that. It's like just because you can have a meeting in your pajamas from your couch doesn't mean that you should, you know?
Right.
Sometimes getting dressed up and going into the office for a face-to-face meeting is still the best way to build rapport and really foster that genuine connection.
I completely agree. Sometimes a good old-fashioned face-to-face conversation is still the most effective tool. It's all about recognizing what the situation calls for.
Well, I think we've officially covered all the bases in this deep dive. We've explored the pros and cons of Zoom Teams and Google Meet. We imagined the future of virtual communication. And we even touched on some of those like philosophical and ethical questions that come up as technology evolves.
Yeah. And hopefully we've given you, our listener, the knowledge to make informed decisions about which video conferencing platform is the right fit for you, and to think critically about how this technology is going to shape the future of how we connect with each other.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with one final thought. We've talked a lot about the possibilities of video conferencing, but ultimately, it's just a tool.
Yeah.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
You're right. It all comes down to how we choose to use it.
The future of video conferencing isn't like set in stone. You know, it's a blank canvas, and we all have a role in shaping what it becomes. So I guess the question is, what kind of connections will you build? What impact will you make?
Those are great questions.
That's all for this deep dive. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, happy connecting.